I still have the leash. It's hanging by the door of my apartment, next to a coat hook that's never used. It's cracked and fraying now. The once deep brown, now a faded tan from years of winter walks and summers left in the sun. His name is, still stitched on the inside in small, uneven thread, Max, embroidered by me on a bored weekend in high school. They told me he ran away. It was the spring of my freshman year, right around midterms. I had barely adjusted to campus life. The 3 a.m. fire alarms, the paper-thin walls, the ache of not being known by anyone in the dining hall. I called home like I always did on Sunday, craving some tiny echo of familiarity. Mom answered. Her voice was unusually soft, even apologetic. Max ran off, she said. Last Tuesday. We put up signs, called the shelters. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I remember that moment with unnatural clarity. The way I froze on the cement bench outside the dorm, the weight of the phone pressing against my cheek. My breath stilled. I couldn't speak. My world didn't fall apart. It just sagged inward. I didn't ask many questions. Not then. I think some part of me didn't want to know the details. It was easier to let it be tragic than suspicious. I cried quietly in my twin bed that night, buried under a thrift store blanket, and the kind of grief that makes you feel foolish for caring that much. He was my dog. That's the part they always pretended to forget. Max came into my life when I was 13, the year everything in our house cracked just enough to be permanent. My sister, Lila, had started high school and declared herself too important for chores. My parents were always whisper fighting in the kitchen. I felt like background noise. Until Max. He was a gangly mutt from the shelter, all limbs and oversized. Paws, with eyes too human for a dog his size. I picked him out, paid for his adoption fee with the money I'd saved babysitting, and trained him myself. I woke up at 5 a.m. for the first 2 weeks so he could learn the rhythm of the house. He never chewed the furniture, never barked at strangers, just followed me everywhere, shadowed me like he could feel what I didn't say. He slept on the yai, floor beside my bed every night for 5 years. When I left for college, I asked if I could bring him with me. The answer was no. Dorms don't allow dogs, Dad said, brushing me off. Besides, Max is part of the family now. We'll take care of him. I hesitated, but I had no power back then. Just a suitcase and a scholarship and a goodbye that felt more like being pushed off a ledge. I called every weekend, checked in on Max more than anyone else. They'd say, "He's fine. He misses you." But I noticed the updates got shorter, vaguer. Sometimes they'd forget to mention him at all. Then he was gone. 2 years passed. I stopped asking. What was there to say? They sent me photos of family holidays, birthdays, barbecues. Lila started dating someone rich, a guy who wore salmon-colored polos and once called my major cute. I stopped coming home as often. My excuse was always finals, or work, or a project I couldn't miss. But really, I just didn't like the way they made me feel. Like I was a visitor in the house I grew up in. Then last month, something changed. Lila got married. I wasn't in the bridal party. I wasn't even asked to help. I showed up, late on purpose, and sat in the back. I didn't cry. Not for her. But then, during the slideshow at the reception, projected over the dance floor, I saw him. One of the photos was of her and her new husband, standing on the porch of their freshly bought house. Between them, tail mid-wag, was Max, older, grayer around the muzzle, but unmistakably him. I stared at the screen above the dance floor, unable to breathe. It was a small photo in a fast-moving slideshow, but I saw him, Max, alive, standing in front of their new porch with Lila's hand lazily looped around his collar like he was a prop, like he belonged there. I didn't realize I was gripping my wine glass until it slipped, hitting the floor. With a dull crack. Not enough to shatter, just enough to draw eyes. I muttered an apology and crouched to pick it up, keeping my face down like it would protect me from what I'd just seen. My chest pulsed with a soundless scream. I left early, didn't say goodbye. I barely made it to the car before I burst. Not the kind of sobbing you see in movies. It wasn't loud or cinematic. It was dry and shaky and quiet, like something had come undone inside me and left a hollow in its place. He was alive. They lied. The days that followed moved strangely, like time couldn't decide whether to speed up or drown me. I scrolled through the wedding photos the photographer had uploaded. Most were staged, flowers, smiles, carefully arranged joy. But I found 3 more with Max. One with Lila kissing the top of his head captioned, "Our little ring bearer, E." Sat in the dark of my apartment with the light of the screen glowing against my face. My phone buzzed with meaningless notifications. Friends reacting to the photos, strangers leaving "so cute" comments under the dog's picture. They didn't know what they were looking at. They didn't know they were reacting to someone else's grief. I kept asking myself one question. How long had they had him? Since they told me he was gone? Or did they find him later and just give him to her? No, that wasn't it. I knew. I knew the answer. They never lost him. They gave him to her. It's strange how betrayal doesn't feel like a stab. Not at first. It feels like silence. Like a room you used to know suddenly smells different. I started going back through old texts. I found the one from Mom, 2 years ago. We're heartbroken. Max ran off when Dad forgot to close the gate. We'll keep looking. Please don't stress. Focus on school. I remembered how I'd called the shelters myself from campus, trying to cover the radius. Left voicemails with strangers. Printed flyers even though I wasn't there to post them. They told me not to come home. That it wasn't worth the trip. I believed them. I was grieving a dog they were hiding. 3 nights later, I drove by Lila's house. I didn't plan to. It just happened. I told myself I was nearby, but it was 30 minutes out of the way. Her porch lights were on. A small yellow lamp lit the front window. The kind of warm light that makes it look like kindness lives inside. But I knew better. I sat across the street with the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel. Then I saw him. Max. He padded across the living room behind the sheer curtains. Slower now, older, but still moving with that quiet, clumsy dignity that made him mine. He looked toward the window. For a second, I thought he saw me. My heart jumped, stupidly hopeful. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He just lay down near the couch and rested his head on his paws. I think something in me broke again. But softer this time. Not rage, just sorrow, and an ache that sat in my throat and refused to leave. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I didn't even text. Instead, I went home and sat on the cold tile floor of my kitchen, leash in hand. The one with his name. The one I never threw away. I opened a blank email and wrote, "You didn't lose him. You gave him away." I stared at the blinking cursor. I deleted it. They didn't deserve to know they got to me. They already knew. I started pulling away after that. Quietly. I stopped replying to the family group chat. Stopped sending birthday cards. When Mom called one night, I let it ring. She left a voicemail asking if I was okay. I wasn't. But I also wasn't answering. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not my friends. Not my roommate. Not even Emma, who usually hears everything before I say it out loud. Something about this felt too raw. Not dramatic, just sacred in its betrayal. Like if I spoke it, I'd lose what little control I had left over it. Over him. So I let it sit. I lived my life. Went to work. Bought groceries. Made small talk about the weather in the elevator. But inside, everything sounded like muffled static. The kind that plays on TV when it's been left on too long, unattended. A week later, a package came in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Thin and too elegant to be natural. Lila's inside was a save the date card for their second ceremony, a beach celebration in Tulum. A honeymoon with guests, basically. A chance to wear the dress again and post more curated happiness. She had tucked in a note. "I know you couldn't be there the whole time at the wedding. We really missed you, hoping you can make it to this one. Max will be there too. He loves the beach." Max. She used his name like it was nothing. Like I hadn't buried him in my mind 2 years ago. Like I didn't still keep his leash. Like she didn't steal him with a bow on his collar and a lie already rehearsed. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my drawer and took out the photo. The last one I ever took with Max before college. I was crouched beside him on our front lawn, one hand under his chin, the other holding my phone at arm's length. He was looking at me, not the camera. That was the difference. He always looked at me. 3 days later, Mom called again. This time I answered. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. Too soft. Too careful. That voice parents use when they sense you're slipping away but don't want to admit they caused it. "We haven't heard from you in a while. Lila's been asking if you're okay." "I'm fine." Silence. She tried again. "You got the invite, right? The Tulum thing?" I did. More silence. Then, "I know things have been a little tense, but I really hope you'll come. It'd mean a lot to your sister." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I felt nothing. Not even hurt. Just the slow realization that she still didn't get it. None of them did. "She took my dog," I said. There it was. My voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. I said it like you'd say a fact. "It's raining. The coffee's cold." "She took my dog." Mom didn't speak. "She told me he ran away," I continued. "I cried for weeks. I called shelters. I stopped coming home because I couldn't handle walking into a house that felt empty without him. Still, nothing. And you all let me believe it. You let me grieve him. While she paraded him around like a party trick. Finally, Mom exhaled. We thought it would be easier. My throat went tight. "For who?" She didn't answer. I didn't wait. I hung up. That night, I made a quiet decision. I wouldn't go to Tulum. I wouldn't send a gift. I wouldn't write a long message explaining why I wasn't showing up. They never gave me that courtesy. Not when they rehomed Max. Not when they decided Lila's happiness mattered more than my grief. This was my silence now. A silence they'd feel. I didn't block their numbers. That would have been too dramatic. Too easy for them to spin. Instead, I let their texts come through and float unanswered. Hey, can you RSVP to the Tulum link? Mom says she hasn't heard from you. Are you okay? Max keeps looking at the door like he's waiting for something. I read them in silence. The way you read news about people you used to know, with detached curiosity and the occasional jolt of ache you don't admit to anyone. A week passed, then 2. I thought maybe that was the end of it. The lie, the distance, the slow unraveling of everything we used to pretend was family. But then I got a letter. Real paper. Heavy envelope. My name written in a voice that still tried to sound like it cared. It was from Dad. I'm not good with words, and I know I've failed you in more ways than I can count. But I want to explain what happened. I sat at the window with the letter in my lap. It was raining outside, the soft, drizzly kind that turns the city to watercolor. I read the whole thing twice. He said Max was getting older, that he was struggling with long walks, that after I left, he started following Lila around more, not because he stopped loving me, but because she was there, that Mom suggested Max might adjust better if he had a new person to anchor to. They gave him to her officially a month before they told me he ran off. A month. They chose not to tell me because, in his words, we were afraid you'd come back and take him. And it would hurt Lila more than you know. She'd bonded to him. It would have crushed her. They didn't mention how I felt. Not once. I didn't cry when I finished the letter. I just folded it up, placed it back into the envelope, and tucked it in the bottom drawer, with old birthday cards and report cards they never asked about. I didn't need an apology. I needed acknowledgement. And even in their version of the truth, I was just collateral. I was always the one asked to understand. 2 days later, I saw Max again. It wasn't planned. I was in the old part of town, running errands, when I caught sight of that same silver car Lila drives pulling up in front of a cafe. She stepped out, her husband behind her, laughing at something she said. And then, from the back seat, Max. His ears perked up before the door even opened. He stepped out slowly, gingerly, his gait stiffer now. Lila didn't even hold the leash right. She let it drag slack as she scrolled on her phone, the way you walk something you've never had to train. He didn't look up at me. He didn't notice me, standing across the street behind a row of parked cars, frozen. My hand gripped the paper bag I'd just bought, the plastic cutting into my fingers. I wanted to call his name. I wanted to kneel down like I used to and see if some small memory would flicker in his eyes. A tilt of the head, a tail twitch. Something to prove he remembered. But I didn't, because that would have been for me, not for him. And I loved him too much to confuse him like that. So I watched her tie his leash to a table leg, sit down, and sip her drink like she hadn't rewritten history. Max curled under the chair, eyes half-lidded, waiting for someone who wouldn't come. And then I turned around and walked away. I didn't cry until I got home. But even then, the tears were quiet, the kind you feel more in your stomach than on your face. I started thinking about the last time Max and I were truly alone. It was late summer, the night before I left for college. We sat in the backyard, just the two of us, under that old orange porch light that always flickered like it couldn't decide whether to give up. I remember how he rested his head on my thigh, warm and steady, like he knew something was about to change. I hadn't packed everything yet. My suitcases were still half open, my heart even more so. I whispered things to him that night I never said to anyone else, that I was scared, that I didn't want to go, that I felt invisible in that house. Except to him. He didn't move. He just listened. That's what I missed the most, I think. Being listened to without interruption, without advice or dismissal, or that condescending brand of parental concern that always made me feel like an inconvenience. Max just stayed. That kind of loyalty is rare, and now it's gone. Tulum came and went. They sent photos to the group chat, everyone sun-kissed and barefoot, champagne glasses clinking, Mom in a flowing dress, Dad red-faced and smiling, Lila beaming in white again, and Max, seated beside the couple in matching leis, eyes tired, his tongue poking slightly out in the heat. I didn't open the album. I just saw the preview image and muted the conversation. No one noticed I wasn't there. Or maybe they did, and it was easier not to ask. I started therapy again. It wasn't a big declaration, no Instagram post, no soft, glowing quote about healing. I just Googled someone local, booked the session, and showed up on a Thursday afternoon with nothing but a knot in my chest and a name I hadn't spoken aloud in weeks. The therapist's office was warm and quiet. Neutral paint, soft chair, a lamp that hummed faintly like it was trying to soothe you before the session even started. "So," she said gently, "what brings you here?" I hesitated. Then, after a breath, "They told me my dog ran away, but they gave him to my sister." It hung in the air like something sacred. She didn't flinch, just nodded. "That sounds like betrayal." I stared at her for a moment. Not because it was new information, but because no one had ever called it what it was. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't burn the way you expect. It doesn't scream or rage. It just hums beneath everything. A quiet hum that changes the way you hear the world. I started saying no to things, no to calls. No to invitations that felt more like guilt bait than real warmth. No to the role I'd always been assigned, the flexible one, the understanding one, the one who makes room. There's a difference between being generous and being erased. They never saw it, but I do now. Grief is strange when it has no funeral. I kept waiting for it to end. The ache, the weight, the quiet little punch in the ribs every time I saw a leash at a thrift store or passed a dog park. But it didn't end. It just softened at the edges. It sat with me like an old roommate. Familiar, a little bitter, but no longer loud. I stopped checking Lila's social media. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized that watching someone else smile with something they stole from you is a form of self-harm. Let them post their curated perfection. Let the world believe she's a glowing bride with a loyal dog and a picture-perfect family. The truth doesn't need proof anymore. One night I was cleaning out my closet when I found Max's old toy, a stuffed raccoon with one ear chewed off. I don't know how it ended up in my things. Maybe I packed it without thinking that day I moved out. Or maybe it was left in some forgotten corner of my room, overlooked when they turned my space into storage. I held it for a long time. It smelled faintly of dust and plastic bins. But for a second, just a second, I imagined him bounding. Into the room again, ears flopping, eyes lit up like the world was made just for us. I sat on the floor and cried until my throat hurt. I've started walking again. Not for exercise, just walking. No destination, just movement. I take a different street each time. Sometimes I imagine Max beside me. The sound of his paws, the way he'd glance up every few steps like he was checking I was still there. I don't bring headphones. I let the silence talk. Last week I saw a new dog at the rescue near my building. Young, black and white. Big paws, not Max, not even close. But when I looked at him, something inside me didn't tighten. It softened. The volunteer asked if I wanted to meet him. I said no. Not yet. I'm not ready for a new beginning. But I'm starting to believe one might be possible. I haven't told anyone this, but I wrote a letter. Not to Lila, not to my parents, to Max. I didn't plan it. I just started writing one night, pouring out everything I couldn't say back then. Not angry words, not demands. Just the truth, as I lived it. You were the only thing that made me feel like home. I'm sorry they used you like that. I hope you're still getting soft blankets and long naps. I hope you know I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I trusted them. I shouldn't have. I folded it and placed it inside the old leash loop. I don't know what I'll do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe someday I'll bury it in a quiet place with a tree nearby and forget exactly where. But for now, it's enough to know I wrote it. It happened quietly, not with a knock or a phone call. Just a notification on my screen. Lila sent you a message. I stared at it for a long time. She hadn't texted me directly in months. Not since the wedding, not since I ignored the RSVP. For her beach blessing, not since I said nothing after they paraded Max in leis and linen. I opened it, expecting guilt dressed up as kindness. But it was just this. Hey! Max isn't doing too well. The vet said his kidneys are failing. I thought you should know. He still sleeps with that old blanket you left behind. Anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry. That last line sat like a weight at the bottom of the message. No explanation. No grand performance. Just, I'm sorry. And for the first time in this whole ordeal, it didn't make me angry. It just made me tired. I didn't respond right away. I walked instead. Down past the streetlights, where the sidewalk buckles and the air starts to smell like rust and evening rain, I passed 2 dogs, one golden retriever, one small and scrappy, both pulling their owners in opposite directions like joy was too urgent to wait. I watched them disappear, then sat on the curb. The truth is, I had imagined this moment for years. What I'd say if I ever saw Max again. If I had 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second. Would he remember me? Would he wag his tail? Would he be confused? Would I cry or freeze? Would he know I never stopped looking for him, even when I stopped calling? Sent back 2 words, "Can I see him?" Lila answered almost immediately, "Yes." I think he'd like that. The next morning I stood outside her house for the first time in years. Everything looked the same and different all at once. The fake tulips in the porch planter, the wreath with their last name stitched in cursive thread. A soft wind rustled the wind chime I made in middle school. They'd kept it. Lila opened the door. She looked smaller. Not in size, in energy. Like life had peeled something off her. "He's in the living room," she said. I'll give you space. And then, like a scene from a dream, I saw him. Max. Curled up on a thick blanket, grayer now, face resting gently on his paws, his body thinner, his breathing slower, but still him. His ears twitched at the sound of my step. I knelt down beside him. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, my voice already breaking. He looked up. His eyes, dulled, but not empty, met mine, and for a moment, something flickered. His tail thumped. Once, then again, slow, heavy, like a heartbeat too tired to run, but too loyal to forget. I didn't reach out. Not yet. I just sat on the floor beside him, cross-legged, hands resting between my knees, letting him decide if this was real. After a minute, he inched forward, barely, and rested his chin on my leg. I cried. Not the quiet tears anymore, the kind that rack your chest, the kind that make your shoulders shake, the kind you only cry once you're safe, when the thing you've been holding for years finally lands. He remembered. He still knew me. Lila didn't come in. She didn't need to. Max and I sat there for what felt like hours. I told him everything, about the walks I took without him, the nights I kept his leash by the door, the letter I wrote, the dreams where he came back. He blinked slowly, his eyes, glassy with age, but still locked to mine, and when he drifted off to sleep with his head still on my lap, I stayed still. I stayed. Because this time, I wasn't going to be the one who left. Max passed 3 days later. I was there. They let me stay, with him until the very end. And when the vet arrived at their house, soft-voiced and gentle-handed, it was me Max looked at. Not out of confusion, but peace. He laid his head against my arm, like he used to when storms rattled the windows of my childhood bedroom. And just like that, he let go. No dramatics, just breath, and then stillness. I didn't speak much after. Lila handed me a small box with his collar and blanket. We didn't hug. We didn't cry in tandem like sisters in movies do. But something had softened between us. Not forgiveness, not even understanding, just acknowledgement. "I should have told you," she said. "I should have fought harder to give him back when I saw how much he missed you." I didn't answer. Because sometimes the most honest thing you can say is nothing. I walked away with the box pressed to my chest, got into my car, closed the door, and sobbed into the steering wheel like a kid again. But it was different this time. It wasn't the cry of betrayal or longing or rage. It was grief, pure, whole, aloud. He was gone. But this time, I had said goodbye. At home, I placed the collar and leash together. I didn't hang them by the door anymore. I tucked them into a wooden box lined with the raccoon toy, the letter I wrote, and one Polaroid of us in the backyard under the orange light. I closed the lid and slid it under my bed. Not forgotten. Just put down. A few weeks passed. No dramatic changes. I still go to work. Still make tea at night. Still walk without a leash. But I breathe easier now. The silence in my apartment no longer feels like absence. It just feels like quiet. Sometimes, I still dream of him. In the dream, he runs ahead, fast, weightless, younger. And I follow. I never catch up. but he always looks back to make sure I'm coming. One Sunday morning, I opened the shelter website again, not to replace him, just to see. There was a dog, not like Max. Brown and stocky with ears that stuck out too far. His name was Clyde. He had been returned twice. I clicked apply, not because I needed something to heal me, but because I finally had room, and that was my quiet revenge. Not anger, not spite. Just reclaiming what they tried to erase. My love, my grief. My right to remember him fully, without their edits, without their story. I never told them when I got Clyde. But sometimes, when I walk him past a house with wind chimes and a porch light that flickers, I wonder if they look out the window. And I hope they know he never really belonged to them. And I'm finally free.